Bryan, if you could just tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do and why we're having this discussion.
Yeah, sure. Live in Oklahoma City, and I've lived here most of my life, and have for 22 years kind of worked in and out of kind of sports and
Hmm.
coaching and technology and media, and run and the CEO of a company called the Bedford Agency, which I started almost 4 years ago, really to help transform how parents and student athletes go through the college recruiting process. My background is 7 years at the Division I and Division II level as a college coach and director of recruiting, both at TCU, now in the Big 12,
Hmm.
as well as smaller colleges here in the Midwest, and then also a stint in minor league baseball as well, working and doing sales and administrative and marketing and things like that. So all of that background plus kind of 15, 16 years in technology and technology sales allowed me to kind of reach this point where many families were continuing to ask questions around how does recruiting work. And so what we've tried to do is try to simplify that, create a way to make it easier for people to understand how that process works, disseminate that information in a really easy way, and serve that up using a little bit of technology. It's kind of the art and science of recruiting, and really help parents and families go through that process. So that's why we're here today.
So one of the questions I have is let's put myself in the position of a parent who maybe
Sure.
has a talented athlete who could get a scholarship, and they reach out to you. How do you leverage your knowledge to be able to support them? What kind of things do you, is it educational? Is it you contacting um, sports organizations, colleges, and promoting this athlete? How do you actually do your job?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I think so. Number one, the NCAA has got pretty strict rules on kind of how recruiting works, and so you either have to be on one side of the fence or the other. You can't straddle that. And I'll give you some examples. I mean, there's plenty of examples out there where people were, working on behalf of the student athlete, and then also getting a fee for services and data and reports and so forth from the colleges.
I see.
They've really put a kibosh on that, to be honest
Yeah.
with you. NCAA says that if you want to be a recruiting service for the schools and the universities, then you have to be registered to be an actual service. So, if it's Duke or it's Texas or Michigan or a Division II school, it really doesn't matter. Many of them, in certain sports, services are more prevalent. So in college football, as an example, there are many services. I shouldn't say many, but there are, let's say there's a good half dozen kind of, really solid services that grab data, information, requirements. They make evaluations on prospective student athletes. They become an extension of the staff, and they're paid a fee for that work, right? So, the NCAA has put a requirement around how many coaches you can have on your staff, and how many GAs, and how many, all the various different requirements.
Sure.
And then the requirement on those services is that, you got to work directly for the school and provide a service for the school.
So you don't work for the schools. You
So on the
work
other
for
side of
the
that,
athletes.
yeah. So on the other side of that is then there's a bunch of parents, though, that need help. So much like you, Tim, we have young kids and we're looking out for our kids. Sometimes our club coach or high school coach, they may know a lot about this. They may have been through it either as a former athlete or they've got a lot of experience, but there are a lot of coaches that have zero idea. And the dynamics of recruiting have changed a lot, right? The early signing period in football is a good example of where it's changed. The recruiting calendars are continually changing. We're dealing with a global health crisis right now. That will change a bunch of different things. So those parents are looking for advisement, just like you, Tim. Like, I don't know about you, but I haven't done my taxes in my entire life. Like, the same guy that's done my taxes for 21 years, right? 22
Yeah.
years, right? But I wouldn't even want to start. I want to give that. I want to make sure that I hire a trusted, if I I happen to be in a lawsuit, as an example, I would want a professional advisor to help me through that process and litigate that for me. So the way that I explain what I do is I'm here to be kind of your trusted advisor to help those parents understand what the language is that the coaches are using, what is the timeline that they're using, how they're making an evaluation, what are they seeing, actually giving the student athlete an evaluation. Sometimes they don't like that. Everybody wants to have rose-colored glasses, but being honest about what's going on and what's not going on is really important, because then you're able to take some cycles out of the process. You're able to streamline who you target. You're able to be realistic about where you can play. You're able to be much more. You're able to save some costs, because you're not going to. You're not. If you're a 5'10", 140-pound DB, you probably don't need to be going to Florida State to camp. Like, it probably doesn't make sense, right? If you're a 5'10", 240-pound tackle, you probably don't need to be going to Florida State to go to their football camp, right? So, but parents don't know that. They think, more is more is more, because that's what society has said. We need to go to every travel game. We need to do so sometimes a lot of what I do is actually less is more. Let's be much more focused. So my job really is to help them as a trusted advocate and advisor to understand what to do and how to go through it. I teach them tricks and tips, and give them guidance on what to do. Given the dynamics of recruiting are evolving. I've got kids that are high major kids that are going through it, and they're trying to deal with, when do they take an official visit? How soon do they make a decision? Will this offer be there when I'm faced with this, making a decision in next month or the month after or whatnot? For many kids, the vast majority of kids, they won't be recruited at a really high level, and their recruiting for next year hasn't even started really. I mean, people are doing some evaluations of film, but they'll wait until they've got more data or they see them in camp. So you got to really, it's a long-winded answer, Tim, but I think it's important that you understand that to be a recruiting service, you're a paid fee to the schools, but there's a way to advise, and I don't consider myself a recruiting service at all, but to be an advisor, really your job is to really help families go through the process. And so everything I do is kind of with a family first mentality.
So how long does this process take? If are we talking a year, 2 years, longer, where you're working with a family, or is it often a case where families come to you kind of that senior year of, hey, we haven't had any scholarships, help us?
Yeah, so it just depends. So we put them on like a kind of a 12-month retainer is the way that we do it. So a lot of families will end up starting kind of the first quarter of whatever year it is. So maybe it's after their freshman year or after their sophomore year or after their junior year. Most everybody comes on kind of in the first quarter or two of the calendar year, so to speak. And then we just keep them on through, either a 12-month engagement or until they sign. Okay. So it just depends. Your better players need to start earlier, right? Because the demands start earlier. For most kids, it's really kind of, January of their junior year is the bulk of kids when they start. But, I have kids that have started after their freshman year, and that's fine as well. I typically tell parents that it needs to be when you're competing at a high level of varsity competition in high school, whenever that is. So that might mean if you're a great lacrosse player, that might mean after your freshman year, or you're a women's track athlete and you do really well in the state competition and it's after your sophomore year. So it all depends based on kind of your level of play. But, I've seen some kids that, they want to get going, and candidly, they're, they haven't really played at a really high level. They play JV or freshman ball or something like that. And for those kids, they just need to continue to develop, just become a better student athlete. And then when you're playing at that level, then you become kind of a recruitable, potentially a recruitable student athlete.
So you're advising the parents, you're advising the athletes. Do you have interactions with the universities and the coaches at the universities of, hey, you should check out this person?
No, I try to, now I've got buddies that are in the industry that'll call me from time to time. But I really try to say, up front, like, coaches don't want to hear from a guy like me. And to be honest with you, with parents, um, they really don't want to hear from the parents either. They want to recruit the student athlete. They want to recruit the kiddo, right? And so I think that's really important that I set that expectation up front, is that my job is really not to peddle your student athlete around to colleges. They don't want to hear from me anyways.
Mm-hmm. So I know some of this may be things you can't answer, but one of the questions that most people would have is, is it a worthwhile investment in doing the job that you do? And you
Sure.
mentioned this isn't a full-time thing that you do. And so from a financial perspective, somebody interested in doing what you do, is you're doing it, you're obviously getting paid. Is it lucrative?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah. So for me, I mean, it's certainly it's been fun to kind of get it off the ground, and it's been profitable. And I wouldn't keep doing it if it wasn't worthwhile to do it, right? Am I able to drop everything right now and go pay all the expenses and the mortgage and all that stuff? Certainly not yet, but there's certainly a huge opportunity out there when you think about the hundreds of thousands of student athletes that play in each, if not millions, excuse me, that play sports in the United States. There's a significant pool of people. There are also a number of companies that have been kind of birthed from purely the technology angle, and we leverage a bunch of technology too. That we do at the Bedford agency, but there's been people that have kind of been birthed from like applications and portals and communications, and that's fine. Kind of think of that as the science, but I think of recruiting as both art and science. You need that coach, right?
Mhm.
Pardon the pun, as well as the tools and technology, right, to help you execute. It's kind of like if I think about a strength coach, you could give all the classes and put it on an iPad and make it available for the student athletes to go in and train in the room. And somebody would say, well, we don't need strength coaches anymore. Well, the reality is you still need them for that stuff that you really can't put into like a pure document. You need that coaching. You need that time where you're consulting. You need that time where a parent calls you and say, they took an offer from me. They need that time when you put your arm around a kid's neck and say, congratulations, or whatever the case may be. And that's part of that art and science that go into this process. So for me, it has been, I shouldn't say like overly lucrative, but it has been profitable, very profitable business. We've built it based on some technology that has made it that way. But we've also looked at kind of the cost models that are out there. If you look at a lot of the technology platforms, many people will charge like a monthly rate. We just do a flat fee, but a lot of people do a monthly rate of anything from 15 to maybe 150 to $200 a month. And
Mhm.
so if you aggregate that, people are spending thousands of dollars on going to college anyways. And
Yeah.
I think we're much more on the low end of that fee, but
Mhm.
still delivering kind of a boutique service. So what I've kind of said is, because this is not like my full-time job here, I'm doing it as a supplement and I'm doing it as a passion project, in a way to give back to the knowledge and the intellectual property I've given, is just be fair with the price, but my time has value too.
Of
And so
course.
I think it's a healthy balance there.
Yeah.
But for me, that's been a way for me to dip back into I'm almost 44 now. When I was 21, I learned how to recruit and my first coaching jobs and all that kind of stuff. And that's still, there's a lot of great traits being a Division I recruiting director that now at my age now, I'm able to kind of take all the technology background and mold that into something that's really valuable. So it's been kind of a back to the future, so to speak, experience for me. But absolutely, I wouldn't be doing it if I mean, I love nonprofit business, but I personally wouldn't be doing this purely just to give it
Yeah.
away, because I do think there's a lot of value, and the market has shown that there's a value for this kind of service.
So I have a couple of questions. The first one you talked about was leveraging technology. And I just wanted to clarify, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So for each of our families, the way that we bring them on is we sit down with we'll do about a 90-minute in-person or virtual meeting. So
Okay.
just like we're using today, we're using collaboration platforms. We use Cisco WebEx to do all of our virtual meetings. I have kids all over the country that I work with. Some of the ones that are local to me within 10 or 15 minutes, I may meet with them in person, just because sometimes it's just nice to get out and do that and have that personal interaction. But for a lot of kids, we literally meet with them at their kitchen table,
Mm.
and we do this kind of a conversation with them and their family, and we coach them. So that's the first thing. In fact,
Okay.
next week I'm hosting kind of a all hands with every one of my families and their kids, and we're going to talk about all the changes that are getting ready to happen in college athletics, and what does that mean to the recruiting calendar. So we're going to meet with all of them, leveraging some of those leveraging technology. The other thing that we do is that each of my families, we set up a personal family collaboration community, leveraging Cisco WebEx Teams, where we're able to communicate directly. So I might have mom and dad and the son or daughter and myself in a room, and I'm providing them personal updates specific to their kid. Now, I also give them mass information that I might drop into a couple of different of my family's rooms, but I'm also targeting what is specific for Susie and Jimmy, and what are the things that we need to do specific to them. Maybe it's a camp, maybe it's correspondence with a college coach and how to respond to this, or how to get an official visit signed up, or what workout to do, or whatever the situation may be. And so that becomes, for 99% of the time, that family app is what a lot of the kids will call it, is how they correspond with me. So the kid sees the communication, they see how we're talking to them about recruiting, and they're up to speed. And then the parents also know and understand what is the expectation, and then we're able to kind of give each other coaching and recommendations and who's going to do what. And I do that so that they all stay on the same page.
Mm.
A lot of times we might give them homework, and I might say, to the son or daughter, this is your homework, mom and dad, this is your homework, and then I'm going to go do this and come back to you with an answer. So it keeps us all on the same page. And I literally every week am dropping in information for their families. And then I use, typical tools, which is like email communication with my
Sure.
families. They'll get some broad messages that'll go out, and I'll have updates and newsletters and different things that'll go out kind of on a monthly basis. But really that family app that I talk about is really the secret sauce that a lot of people really love, because they can get a hold of me 24/7, 365. So
Yeah.
that's how we leverage technology and kind of the modern way that people work, and how kids leverage collaboration. But we're able to do it in a way that also can serve up information in a timely format, and make this a little tech savvy with the way that people work today.
Sure. Really interesting information, and I like your idea of the family groups where you can put things in individual families, but then
Yep.
also everybody's in the same group where you can put information in and they all get it at once, as opposed to you having to send it to 14 different groups.
Yep.
That's a time efficient method.
Yep.
You talked a little bit about recruiting and your experience as a recruiter. I'm curious how you recruit clients for your business. What
Yeah.
strategies do you do? Is it word of mouth, or I know you have a newsletter. I get it myself, but how else do you recruit athletes?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and I certainly don't have this completely perfected. Again, probably 17 years in sales, but the way that I would answer that is, I think it's multifaceted. The first is certainly word of mouth has been incredible. I have people all across the country that know me, know of me,
Hmm.
and it's become kind of a referral network. And so for people that send me a family that ends up signing up, I drop them a gift card in the mail and say thank you. I appreciate that. Send me another one. Love to work with them. And so it's just my way of giving back to the people that have worked with me. And so word of mouth has been certainly incredible. The second piece would be we were pretty specific on our social strategy out of the gate, leveraging Twitter mainly. We'll do Facebook, and I do Instagram more, probably but Twitter is probably 80% of it. Instagram is probably the 15, and Facebook's probably 5%. I just found that that's been really good. A lot of the kids are there, and their parents are there, so that has ended up working out really well. But we've been pretty specific on our social strategy, candidly, and we get a lot of inquiries on that. And then early on, we set up a kind of an email database, and we have about 1,000 people in our email distribution, and that started with me just grabbing my contacts out of my phone and literally kind of doing it bootstrap. And now we've just over the last year we looked at the tools that were out there, and we've invested in some email automation to make it easier, and we try to create a monthly letter and those things. And then the fourth piece and the final piece is then through our strategic partnerships. So we've been able to create partnerships that allow us to tell the stories as well, both with communication and strategic partnerships. So we've hosted events, we've collaborated with other technology companies that are into this, and so allowing other people to help tell our story has been really, really important, both on the recruiting front, but just as a brand in general. So I try to join as many blogs, Twitter chats, other content pieces that are out there, just because we're a small business here. And so if we can just get inserted into a bunch of other things, and that allows other people to help tell our story for us and be a vehicle into other people that may or may not do us. And then probably the final thing, I said four, but I'll give you a fifth one, is really over the last year, the one thing that we've tried to do is create an asset that could be wholly ours. And so we launched what we're calling the college sports recruiting workshops, and we've hosted those literally all over the country now. In fact, I'm trying to book one in Atlanta, where we now have host entities that will bring us in and produce those. Those can be sponsorable events. We've done some of those, we've done some of those for a fee. We've done some of those pro bono. There's a bunch of different models that are out there depending on the scenario. We're getting to a point now where people will pay, and because they see that they are legitimate and we can drive people. And we also have high school coaches that will inquire and say, hey, we'd like for you to do this with our school. And if any college or any high school coach asks us to come, we just do those for free, just to be a servant to those coaches and give back. And so I did one last month. I've got a couple more that are being discussed right now. And we did 2 in-person workshops in Dallas and in Oklahoma City, and another third planned in Atlanta soon. So those have been really popular, and certainly getting the word out and giving people a taste of what it's like is certainly, it's kind of the razor blade model, right? We're going to give them a little bit and then hope that we can attract a little bit more with some honey there. So those have been kind of the 5 key tenets of how we've attracted our business so far. But by and large, word of mouth has been the number one thing. People that know me or know of me has been the way that it's worked most of the time.
So last question, you have a full-time job, you got a family, you're doing this on the side, and everything you've described is, I'm thinking, wow, that's a lot of work. That's going to take a lot of time. That's a lot of effort. How do you, just as a person, right, as an employee, as a parent, as a husband, how do you manage all of this so that you are balanced?
Yeah, sure. No, it's a good question. Don't ask my wife that, because it's a challenging topic. I mean, I think there's certainly some days where the load is heavier than others. We've really tried to automate as much of this as we possibly can, right? With email blasts, and I can do some pre-served social posts and automate kind of our collaboration app with all of our families. So a lot of it really works. I also work from home, so I'm able to really multitask with a bunch of stuff, and there's stuff flying all the time with what we're doing here. So it is a balance. I think there's seasons to it. There's a bit of a seasonality to it, Tim, that you learn kind of when is it, when do you need to strike while the iron's hot, and then when do you when do you need to strike when the iron's hot from a sales perspective, and then when do you need to be able to deliver on information. There's certain seasons of the year that require more of your mental capacity, right, to help a parent go through that process. So it's a delicate balance. I'm thankful I've got a lot of work flexibility, but it doesn't mean that I'm not typing on Twitter at 10:30 at night trying to answer some questions. But I have a global job and I work from home and my day job, and so I'm able to kind of balance those. But yeah, it's a balance, and it's an important balance to have for sure. Absolutely.
Well, Bryan, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me and kind of sharing your expertise. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. And listen, if people have questions on recruiting and what we do, listen, follow us at Bedford Agency on any of your social platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and then you can just go to thebedfordagency.com, and we've got tons of stuff there, and we post blogs and all that stuff, and you can just drop a note if you want to be part of our email distribution list. Love to have you guys. Thanks for having me, Tim.
Thank you.